And welcome back. In this video you will learn about the Satir categories and how body language can be used to influence your students. Now, wouldn't it be useful to be able to build rapport quickly with your classes, or have an impact on your students' state so you can influence how they think, feel and learn? Now that would be cool, wouldn't it? Before we find out more about the Satir categories, I will talk a little bit more about how they were discovered. The founders of NLP, Bandler and Grinder, modelled a leading family therapist, Virginia Satir. Whilst modelling her, two key areas of NLP emerged: the meta model and the Satir categories. From studying Satir's therapy sessions, Bandler and Grinder noticed how Satir was using her postures, the ones we now call the Satir categories. The body postures of Satir categories have an impact on the giver's state as well as the receiver's state as well. Having awareness of these different postures and styles and their effect on other people gives us flexibility to communicate in more ways. We can therefore communicate more effectively in one-on-ones, group meetings, classroom situations, or presentations, and when training others. There are 6 main categories. Let me take you through them one at a time. The first is blaming. Now, the blaming person uses this type of stance and often wants to shift responsibility from themselves to someone else. They will point the finger and use stiff gestures. They tend to make value judgments, and when this posture is used, invariably it results in a conflict or disagreement of some kind. The internal state that we have when we point at someone is not often positive and can have a really powerful effect on the receiver. So be mindful when using this too much in the classroom. This can often be interpreted as aggressive and will create feelings of defensiveness and the need to counter that communication. It would be more effective to use a different Satir category, especially when working with children. The next one is called a placator. This is the opposite to the blamer. In fact, the placator seeks sympathy and may even take the blame for something. When the palms face upwards, they make the communication look as if they're literally sharing a gift to the receiver. People that use this tend to use agreeable words and want to please others. It is a posture of weakness though, so be aware of that, and can be used to your advantage though as a teacher. You may wish to use it when perhaps complaining about a student's behaviour. Here's an example. Look, John, I've asked you now 3 times to start your work. Before I move you, are you able to get on with the work now, please? In this interaction, we are actually appealing to the student's better nature. The recipient will then feel like they are receiving a gift. In the classroom, placating should be used with caution as it communicates weakness. However, it is useful when reinforcing rules with challenging students, and as long as it's used in conjunction with another Satir category, like the leveller position, it's effective. The leveller uses a grounded position with palms pressing down at the mid-body height. This posture communicates that the person is truthful and factual. They mean what they say. This posture can have a calming effect with both the giver and the receiver. It can help as a teacher when you want to be gently assertive, and very influential as it communicates honesty, accuracy, and can be used to make your viewpoint very clear to the students. When I was an assistant principal leading assemblies, I would use it when talking about key behaviours I wanted to see from the students and the consequences of them not behaving appropriately. The next one is computing. The computing person uses this body language and often hides their emotions. This posture has one arm resting on another. Your head and your spine are long and straight and up. You might be looking slightly upwards as well. This communicates to the observer that you are cool, calm and collected, and looks like you are thinking through some ideas or something. Computing is a great posture to use if you want to give your students some thinking time. What do you think? Just by using this posture, it helps you and the students take a moment to reflect, think, and your students are given more time to actually come up with the answers to the questions that you give. The next category will switch quickly between the three positions. This person may seem a little bit distracted, and it's called the distractor. The distractor should be avoided in the classroom, as it can actually inhibit a lot of what's going on and the message that you're trying to provide, because you're going from one different thing to another. The distractor should be avoided in the classroom, as it will actually inhibit the learning and will quite literally distract the students from your message. Here's another posture which is not one of the original Satir categories, however it's useful for teachers when giving a sequential list of instructions. The sequencer uses measured sequential movements in line with the middle of their body. Their hands will move in steps horizontally from sides to the centre, and they will use similar language to the computer person and appear unemotional and logical. This is particularly useful when giving out instructions. For example, before you go to break, you need to complete question 4, put your textbook away, and then put your sun cream on. So, you can see how we can use this, and we basically use our hand to mark out a sequence in space, thus communicating there is a sequence to follow. I'm sure you do this at some point naturally already. At this stage, I would like to introduce you to the idea of an Nlp term congruence. If a person is congruent, then their communication is consistent in relation to the words they use, their voice tone and their body language. When people are incongruent, then messages can be diluted and they may be perceived as not being sure of themselves. Whereas if a person is congruent, all parts of the communication are aligned, they have presence and are perceived to be confident and know what they are talking about. So by being conscious about how we use our body language in the classroom, we can have a greater impact and influence with the students we teach. This helps manage behaviour and will aid greater understanding in the classroom. Here are a few ways that you might use the Satir categories. Use all the Satir categories when building rapport. Use the blamer only to make a strong point. Avoid pointing at the audience. Use the passator for sympathy or to weigh up some possibilities. You could use a distractor to be funny or tell a joke. Use the leveller for being frank, or when you want to convince students of something. Use computing to encourage thinking and questioning. Computing is also useful if you want a dissociated point of view coming from a different perspective on something. This can actually be a good place to make logical decisions or to resolve conflict because you detach from the emotions of an event. Okay, let's put it into practice then. Over the next week or two, start to become aware of your body postures and movements. You can start off by experimenting with one Satir category per day. So for the whole day, you might try out the leveller in situations where perhaps you want to be more assertive and very influential. Notice how you feel and how your students react. As you become more familiar with the different postures and you start to use them consciously in your teaching, notice the impact it has on yourself and on your class. Over time, it becomes second nature and you start to use these postures naturally in your teaching and conversations. Okay, that's it for this one. You'll see me in the next.